Hello everyone, and welcome to Andrew Broussard Watercolors. Today we're going to do something a little different. We're going to paint a fast and loose still life from a photograph. Now, a few guidelines that I'm giving myself for this, and a few just heads up. The first thing is that I am under the weather, and you might be thinking, well, if that's the case, you should be laying down and resting. Well, the neighbor is cutting down or trimming back a tree, and that's usually an all-day affair, so laying down and resting is kind of not really an option at the moment. The next thing is that I'm going to try to stay within a limited palette, and by limited I mean I really don't want anything too extravagant, too fancy, or something that you wouldn't find on a normal palette. So I'm just going to try to use basic colors that everybody would have if they chose to follow along with this video. I don't know if it'll come out good or not, but that's one of the stipulations I wanted to put in place for it. And I might change some of these things, but kind of throwing that out there. And then the last is that I really don't want to rely on gouache. I don't know if I'll pull gouache in since I'm having a white object in this, but I might rely on Dr. P.H. Martin's bleed proof white. And my focus for this is going to be the path of light itself and getting a 3D effect. So even though we're going fast and loose, I really want to achieve a sense of depth for this still life. That's something that's always kind of important to me within still lifes. So let's get started. I'm working from just a really quick photo that I just had set up and taken on one of the other desks in the art room. And not everything in the picture is going to show up, not barely. Most of it's going to maybe 3 objects are going to show up, the 3 central ones. So I'm grabbing some raw umber. I'm going to use this to create my background and then start creating my table. I might give this a sense of vignette or vignette where the entire surface isn't painted. I'm not sure if I mentioned what surface this is, but this is the Stonehenge Aqua, back of a painting, 100% cotton. Get a little direction going here. So far it's just the burnt umber, but I want to change the warmth of it. Let's grab some yellow ochre. I didn't really put any fresh paints out, so I might have to put some out as I go. Let's see. Let's grab some burnt umber, burnt sienna. So raw sienna, burnt sienna. Trying to warm up this spot. And if we wanted to darken that background, but recede it back more, I'm going to go for some ultramarine into that mix. Now, I played around 2 days ago with a little still life. I haven't really done still lifes in a while. I prefer still lifes in oil painting. It's quite fun, but I guess it's just something that I wanted to explore and try out and see the sense of depth that we can get. So usually I'll use a burnt umber to kind of sketch out the location of my figures. For example, right here is this white vase, and we'll try this technique with watercolor with the same approach, and then I'll kind of switch some things around. But here's where my first object's going to be, the vase. We have those grapes which come towards us. I always have a tendency to have something come extreme towards the foreground within a still life, and I think that always helps with the appearance of depth and perspective. Here is this apple, which I kind of just threw there. It's a plastic apple. If you go to antique shops or thrift stores, you can usually find fake fruit, fake flowers, and start building yourself a collection of still life material to paint from. So this is just some more of that burnt umber, just to give the idea. Color wise, I have no idea what I'm going to do for the apple. I think we could do a lone grape here, so I'm going to add an element in. In college, these would be the shadows. We have some Payne's gray to put in some shadow aspects while we're wet and wet. In college, we did a lot of still lifes in our oil painting classes. And there is an artist that I greatly admire, David Leffel. He is, no offense to him, he's getting up there in age, but he has some great videos. But you have to pay for the videos. It's bright light fine art, but he has some still life stuff, and he has some what else does he have? Portraiture work, and it's really well videoed. And I feel like I use his approach now as opposed to whatever approach I had used in college. And I hope that I'm doing him some semblance of justice. Okay, so hopefully you can kind of get an idea of the feel of the scene and the shape. I'm going to use my paper towel to lift out my objects. We could probably pull out in the fashion of the tonalist approach that we take with watercolor, where we can get that texture, or we could pull out big swatches in that fashion of white. Their grapes travel here. They're going to sit in front of this object to help recede that, and then we're going to have our super cool lone grape or two right here, and our apple is going to sit around here. So we have our highlights traveling across, going up into our big object, and we have that lone one there. And like I said, hopefully, since I think I'm following how David Leffel would do it in a watercolor style, though, hopefully I'm doing him justice. Let's grab some ultramarine blue. I'm going to play with some colors. Ultramarine blue and light red oxide for a purple. I'm going to use this to put in some shadows, but distance shadows. And the issue is we're going wet and wet now, so it's going to diffuse some. I should probably have done a dry off, but I still want to just jump right into exploring and keeping that fast and loose exploration aspect happening. So this is the shadow side. The other day I played around with the Zorn palette, which is a figure painting palette, and I looked at some Boldini paintings, and then I applied the Zorn palette to what was it? To landscape, which was pretty interesting. It was fun. But I noticed that once I start painting figures or anything of the like, my approach starts to change, where I have a paper towel in my hand and I'm starting to wipe off the brush, which is a very oil painter approach of me. Let's grab a brighter purple. So I'm going to try to get that alizarin crimson. So this is a synthetic alizarin. Oddly enough, when I was laying in bed on an oil painting Facebook page, somebody was asking about what alizarin was the best, because alizarin is a fugitive pigment, and a lot of the ones now are either marketed as permanent alizarin or xeiyu, like a synthetic. So just pay attention to what you're using in that regard. In regards to pigments, I always feel that the most important thing is light fastness. It doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be super cool, ultra mega mineral pigment. And that's like no offense to anybody that's using that. I'm just saying my main stipulation with pigments is that they have to have good to excellent light fastness ratings. Even if this is our grape that's going to be down here and he's going to cast that shadow. Even if, I lost my train of thought, like I said, under the weather. Grab some lemon yellow into that mix. Putting some of those colors on that apple. Oh yeah, even if it's just like a study, I find that it's just really important for me to use light fast pigments. That's one thing that I had struggled with fountain pens. Here's some Payne's Gray, which I'm going to use to darken up the shadows here and help it sit in place and create a shadow coming out. Within fountain pens, a lot of fountain pen ink is very, very prone to fading in light. And there's some brands like Noodlers that go above and beyond and try to produce inks that are not going to fade. Those shadows out. Put a little bit of the shadow concept on that right side where the grapes are going to be. As you can see, I'm not really adding much form. I'm just kind of putting in the blobby mass. Can y'all hear the, let's grab some ultramarine. Can y'all hear the buzzsaw background? Down in Louisiana, we have a lot of tall oak trees, and they need to be cut back or trimmed down, mainly because of our storms that come through. They get uprooted or fall over and break very, very easily. I think the most common type that does that is the a water oak. I have to ask Matthew Clemens. He's a fast and loose watercolor painter who his day job is I think tree conservation. All right, so we kind of put in our feel. The main thing I'm not really liking too much is the apple, and I know that that's something I'm going to struggle with. I'm going to throw some light red oxide in it just to push it more on the redder side. Right above it, you could see a binder clip popping up. You can throw some of this light red in here too. Catch a few of those reds. found with grapes, if you kind of just vary your patterns of where you're putting pigment in, you can get the illusion of grapes very quickly, at least with watercolor, with oils. Now, here's something that I've always tried to use in watercolor, but it always gives me difficulty. But I think here it would work. If we take a paper towel and we look for specific highlights that we want to pull out, for example, the reflective side right here. Let's see if we can pull anything here. Okay. See if we can pull out some highlights on the grapes. With an oil painting, at this point, I would take a like a titanium white, and I would dot it in with either a very small brush or the back of the brush itself. This helps pull some spots. If you're somebody that uses masking fluid, that would probably help as well. Though chances are, if you're somebody who uses masking fluid, I don't know if you'd be painting this fast and loose. Let's get some green mix for the stems and the flowers. And we'll pop this up when it dries to help it recess back. All right, let's do a dry off and see where we're at. All right, so the dry off results are, I'm very pleased so far. Keeping in mind, this is my second watercolor fast and loose landscape, still life painting. Now we're going to the dry stage. I'm not quite too sure what to expect. A few things to point out. If you want to follow along, I'm going to have the photo that I took up on the Patreon, which is linked down below. You're more than welcome to follow along and paint anything that you do. You have express permission to sign anything you do whenever you follow anything on this channel. This is the bleed proof white. I'm going to try to thin it out some and whiten this up. A few other things, yeah, so if you want to support this channel, I have links down below, and I will have this photo on the Patreon for you to follow. Just kind of wet and pull it out some. Let's leave it right here. Let the light travel a little bit across. And you probably grab a little bit up on top. So you could use whitewash here, or if you're masking fluid in the beginning, just using this for the highlights, and then from there I'm going to work out. I should probably switch over to the number 1 rigger, so I'm going to move that for my thinner dots. I will say, with the background, we had used our raw umber, and we had mixed some ultramarine into it, so that gives us that granulation effect. If we wanted to, and kind of push the time frame of the painting, like the period that it would seem to reside in, we could have darkened that background quite a bit. Really just gone in with Payne's gray or ultramarine and mixed that with burnt umber and just really built up that dark background. In fact, that's something that I thoroughly enjoy, but I think I said in the beginning, I want to kind of keep it kind of vignette-y, so it's going to look more 1900s. In fact, the one that I played around with the other day looks very minimalistic, modern, because of the color scheme and the fast and loose approach. So these are the little highlights on the grapes. We shouldn't have to come back to this guy anymore. We might, just to get some trailing light effects. Let's go back to the number 4. We'll wash it off good. I could put the suggestion of the flowers. Oh, let me dry the bleed proof white. I'm gonna do a quick blow dry. All right, I'm gonna allot myself about 10 more minutes. We're 20 minutes in, and I want to keep it fast and loose, and I want to keep the video at a length that won't stress you all out. And if it feels like I'm going too fast, you could either, obviously pause if you're following along, or you can also actually play the video at a slower frame rate. It's always a little good tip. There's some ultramarine. Some alizarin. All right, speaking of alizarin, let's grab that. And ultramarine for darker purple. Use this for the dark side of this apple. Grab a little bit of water to pull it out. And I can go that raw umber. I should mix it from ultramarine, kind of get it more mellowed out. This is the table portion of the shadow. Kind of just scrub it in and getting those shapes in. Put in the shadow portions, the curves of the grapes. Put darker masses in. I'm just imagining, I'm not even looking at the picture at this point. The picture was there just to kind of get the initial feel. I could throw a Payne's Gray in here too, especially on the foremost one, with the goal of that close dark spot popping forward. Okay, let's build up this lone grape, alizarin. A little bit of Payne's Gray. Okay, the actual form of the grapes are looking a little weak, so I need some variation in there. And I'm just picking out grapes, finding their bottom half. Fix that. All right, let's do a dry off. All right, the dry off works really well. I'm very pleased with this. I think I said we'd go until 30 minutes, so let's grab some alizarin. A little bit more into these grapes. Probably do a little. Right there. So I hope you enjoyed. I mean, not a bad painting for. I guess I'm running a fever right now. I don't know. There has been a cold and a sinus infection going around, and the flu has been going around down here. They've also been burning a lot of the sugar cane, and that just really messes with my sinuses. But I am off from work this week, so that is a blessing that I don't have to use any sick days or anything like that. Let's see, pull that out, pull that out. Lemon yellow. Get a little green side of things. Let's see, I feel like I'm at the point where, since we went so fast and loose, I'm just kind of picking at points. Probably 27 minutes in. I'm going to take a look, and then we'll probably dry it off and sign it. Of course, I hope you enjoyed, and if you follow along, please let me know. Actually, we got 2 minutes left, and what I'm going to do is do a structural change. By bringing some grapes up back here. Let me do a pause, we'll dry off. All right, so I am quite pleased. Those little last minute grapes, we'll give them little highlights too. And I think building that mound of grapes would help give the effect of the grape where it's larger and then it tapers to that end. But ultimately, for 30 minutes, very, very, very pleased. Let's sign it and I'll sign off. Please like, subscribe, follow. If you ever follow along, you have my express permission to sell anything you do. Also, Andrew Watercolors. Let's see how it looks like a matte over it. And let me know what else you would like to see. Any palettes you'd like me to explore with, any topics you'd like me to try to address. I can't promise anything, but I love when y'all give me input and ideas. And there we go. All right, y'all take care. Have a great day. Bye.